So now our cover idle to cover is properly fine. Now we need to set up the move right and move left functionality. So now I'm gonna open character blueprint again, and first of all I'm gonna go to over here where I perform stand to cover functionality. After move component 2, I'm gonna create a new variable and set this to cover, and set the cover variable to true when our character is moved to the cover. I'm gonna set this variable to true, right? And the next thing is we need to set the movement speed for right and for moving left and right. So for this I'm gonna go to the functions of ALS movement system and update dynamic movement settings under here. At this point I'm gonna use branch. So if our cover variable is true, then we will set the set max walk speed to 100. And now if I hit play and check, you can see our movement speed for left and right is slowed down. So now we need the functionality that we can only move left and right with cover object. So currently you can see I can move forward and backward as well. So this is not what we want. So for this I'm gonna open my player input graph. Here is my player input graph and here is player movement input. So in my player movement input I'm gonna use branch over here. If our cover variable is true, then we use separate functionality for moving left and right, otherwise the remaining functionality continues. So if our variable is true, cover variable is true, then I'm gonna use rewrite node over here and use sphere trace for object. I'm gonna use the same from here, sphere trace for object, and I'm gonna use get actor rotation, get actor location, and get actor rotation. Get the right vector from my actor rotation and also get the forward vector. So I'm gonna multiply my right vector to float, and for moving left and right we need positive and negative values. So for this I'm gonna use a function which is get move right and left for axis values. I'm gonna multiply this. So this is -1 to +1. So I'm gonna multiply this to 45 and multiply this to my right vector of my actor rotation and add this to my actor location. So this is my start location, and for my end location I'm gonna use forward vector of my character rotation, multiply the forward vector to 60 and add that to my start location, and this is my end location, right? and set the object type to make array and set this to cover object. So now if I hit play, you can see these traces are working fine. If I set the radius to 5 and so this is my right trace if I press D, and this is my left trace if I press A. So we need these traces so that we can move along with cover object, and when it does not hit something we will stop our movement. So we will set that functionality next. So if the trace does hit something, I'm gonna break the hit result and grab the normal of my hit point and make rotation from x-axis and grab the right vector of my rotation, right, and add movement input. I'm going to use add movement input, so this will be my direction. And for axis value I'm going to use same get move left, move right and left. Sorry, I'm going to copy and paste the node over here. So if I hit play, so these are working but in opposite direction. If I move forward in right side, if I press D, character move left, and if I press A, the character move right side. So I'm gonna multiply this to -1 so that it can properly move left and right. So I'm gonna set this to for 1 frame, and if I hit play now, you can see I can move left and right, and if trace doesn't hit anything then our character will stop moving. See, but the issue is if our character rotates, when I rotate my mouse, you can see its rotation changes and the trace doesn't hit anything and character stops here. So for fixing this, I'm gonna go to here and set actor rotation. At each tick I'm gonna set the actor rotation, get the normal from my hit location, make rotation from X, and subtract 180 from my yaw and set actor rotation. So now if I hit play and check, you can see my character properly move left and right if no matter where I look, and my axis direction is character always moving left and right. So this is the functionality that what we want, and this is working in all directions, right and left. See, so now we need our animation blueprint functionality for moving left and right. So remember we have created these two events in our blueprint interfaces, cover to move right and cover to move left. So we will use that for our animation blueprint to moving left and right. Okay, so I'm gonna use sequence node over here before tracing or before moving right and left. I'm gonna use sequence node. The second node goes here, and from first I'm gonna use get my movement left and right value, which is -1 to +1. So if my value is less than 0, I'm gonna use branch. If value is negative, then I'm gonna get my mesh, get anim instance, and I'm gonna call cover to move left. Okay, so if this is false, our value, there is two cases, our value is greater than 0 or our value is equal to 0. So if our value is greater than 0, which means we can move right side. So if our value is greater than 0, I'm gonna call cover to move right. So third case is if value is equal to 0, then we will goes to idle. So this will goes to nowhere. So now our movement functionality is set up. So now we will set up our animation blueprint functionality for moving left and right. So I'm gonna open my animation blueprint, and here is my base layer. Open my cover system state machine. Here is that we have created cover system state machine. So we can go to from idle, we can go to walk right and walk left. So I'm gonna create a new state, which is my cover walking right. So first we need our animation blueprint interfaces event set up in our animation blueprint. I'm gonna go to event graph and search for event stand to cover event cover to move right and cover to move left. Cover to move left. So I'm gonna use a variable. I'm gonna promote this, use a new boolean, and I'm gonna call this cover to move right, cover underscore move right. So when our cover to move right event fires, we will set this variable to true. So when our cover to move left variable fires, we will set our cover to move right variable to false. So these are 3 events that we need for our cover system. Okay, so now we will go to our animation cover state machine. From cover we can go to stand to cover. From cover we can go to cover walking, and the condition is if our get speed, which is by default in our animation blueprint for ALS. So if our speed is greater than 1, then we will go to cover walking. So if our speed is less than 1, we will go back to cover idle. Get speed. If our speed is less than 1, we will go back to cover idle. So now we will set up our cover walking animations properly. So here is my 2 animations, which is stand, cover walk right and walk left. Walk right and walk left. So these are my 2 animations, right? I'm gonna use blend pose by bool. If our cover move right is true, I'm gonna set the blend time to 0.25 for both cases, true and false. So if our cover to move right variable is true, we will perform cover walk right animation. Otherwise we will perform cover to walk left animation. So if I hit play and check, you can see our character perform the animation, but the issue that I have described with Mixamo animations, these are not properly aligned. So we will rotate our root bone same as we have done for our cover idle animation to 180 in z-axis. So I'm gonna copy and paste the nodes over here, and compile and save. And now if I check the functionality, you can see we can move left and right pretty efficiently. So now if you can see my character doesn't stay at walk left. So for fixing this issue, I'm gonna use the same variable for cover to walk right and left. So I'm gonna use blend pause by bool. If our cover to move right variable is true, then we will perform cover idle face right animation. Otherwise, we have our cover idle face left animation, which is this. Okay, so now if I hit play, you can see my character by default goes to left pose, which is not good. So for fixing this, I'm gonna go to my event graph of character blueprint, and here when we set the when we call the stand to cover, we will call this cover to move right blueprint interface, so that our move right variable set to true and our character stays in cover idle face right animation. Here you can see now I can move left and right and my character stays in proper pose. So I'm gonna set the blend weight to something 0.25, same as we have done for walking. And I'm gonna set this also to 0.25. So now if I hit play, you can see it's now pretty smooth. So this is our cover to move right and move left functionality is properly working fine. So now we need to get out of cover. So for this, I'm gonna go to my character blueprint again, and when we press E, first we will check if our cover variable is false, then we will perform idle to cover animation. So if our cover variable is true, then we will perform exit cover animation. So for this, if this cover variable is true, I'm gonna use get anim instance and call that interface stand to cover and set the cover to false, right? And also I'm gonna set the cover variable to false, like so. So now if I hit play, you can see we can go out of cover, but we need to perform the animation as well. So for this, we need our animation blueprint functionality. So I'm gonna use a state alias. I'm gonna call this cover state alias. So we can perform exit cover animation from our cover idle, and also while stand to cover, we can also perform cover out animation, and also we can perform this functionality when we are performing walking. So these are state aliases that represent these three states. So we will go these three states to our cover out, cover exit state, right? And I'm gonna use set, we can go from these three states to cover exit, which represent the state alias, and the condition will, if our cover variable is false, will perform this functionality. And I have grabbed these two animation from Mixamo as well, cover exit face right and face left. I'm gonna use these two over here in my cover exit state. And here I'm gonna use the same blend pose by bool functionality. Set the blend weight to 0.25 or 0.2. So if our cover move right variable is true, we will perform cover exit face right animation. Otherwise, we'll perform cover idle face left animation. Right? And after performing cover exit animation, we can simply go to our default state, which is our movement state of our ALS. So now if I hit play and check this functionality, you can see I can move out from cover. So I'm gonna set the blend weight to 0 so that our character, so if I set this to 0.2, you can see if I play in slow-mo, my character rotates weirdly, because the animation from Mixamo is causing this issue. They are not facing aligned with forward axis properly, so that's where this happens. So that's this. For fixing this, I'm gonna set the blend duration to 0. And now if I hit play, you can see I can quickly move out from cover and back to our normal pose. So we will move our capsule component as well when we exit out of cover. So for this, I'm gonna grab my capsule component and use move component 2. I'm gonna copy paste this functionality from my project over here. So this is pretty simple. I'm gonna get my actor rotation, get forward vector, multiply the forward vector with -45 and add that to my actor location. So we will move our capsule component to this point and our actor rotation will be the same. I'm gonna set the over blend time to 0.8, right? And open our animation blueprint, and also I'm gonna set the play rate of my cover exit animations to 1.3 and start position 2.2, which works fine for me. These settings, you can see our character moves behind from cover object and goes back to the normal state. So this is now working fine. So we can, here's one more thing that we can add. We can also switch shoulders when we move right and left. I can search for right shoulder, set right shoulder, and set this to true when move right, and set this to false when move left. And you can see our camera switches accordingly when I move right and left. which is pretty good for moving left and right animations. So when we go out of cover, we will set the right shoulder to true so that we can go back to our normal state. So this is pretty fine and working good. Okay, so now the main part is using our overlay states for our cover system. So let's go ahead and set up that functionality.